Welcome to the Badlands, a place I don't think I or anyone I'm going to talk to expected to be. My name is Jared, and for the last 9 months, I've been an out-of-work ad agency senior suit. My last role was the Regional Client Service Director at Grey Singapore, delivering work around Southeast Asia and India. I returned to London last year, fully imagining I'd been in another agency fairly quickly, as had been the case over the last 2 decades, but not so much this time. So I found myself wandering the Badlands. In these 9 months, I've noticed a few odd things in our industry, and I've also noticed a surprising amount of ex-colleagues and clients all in a similar position to me. So I thought it might be helpful and maybe interesting to talk to some of these people, to see how they're doing, discover their experiences, understand what they're looking for, and maybe shine a light on them and their talents, but most importantly, check in with them, as it's a lonely experience being in the Badlands. So please welcome James Dillamore. James is a TV development producer with a career so far that includes working with Academy-nominated directors, major record labels, legendary music producers, and has worked on BAFTA-nominated and Emmy Award-winning productions. And yet, he finds himself wandering the Badlands. So let's find out why and how and what the fuck after all of that, because that's a crazy resume, which he's going to tell us about in detail. So please welcome James Dillamore. James, how are you, buddy?
Hey Jared, I'm okay, thanks. Not so bad today. That little intro set reminds me of like Desert Island Discs, which is what I'd always do. But I'll settle for this podcast first.
Well, you never know. You might get the call. I don't know who does it anymore. Is it Vern Cotton or something? I don't know. Someone.
No, it's Lauren Laverne, I believe.
Yeah. Same indescribable bullshit person. Yeah, well, you never know. You might get a call after it. We'll at them. We'll send them this, and you can then tell them about all your musical highlights, because you've had quite the career. When we chatted offline, I was out the other night with a bunch of other people who've done these. Oh, that's my dog. Brilliant. Jerry, calm down. Hey, calm down. It's okay. Yeah, I was telling everyone that we were recording this thing. I was like, he's fucking worked on this, that, the other, and I was like, Jesus. So. This is going to be hard. So whilst I take the dog outside, why don't you tell everyone about your career so far? Basically, this is a shambles.
That's all right. See if your dog can get me a job. He seems enthusiastic. Okay, so well, yes, I've had quite a long career that spanned a lot of different genres and doing a lot of different things. I suppose in telly, I started out wanting to be a cameraman, but that quickly kind of, I lived in Perivale for a while, which wasn't much fun, and kind of went in as a apprentice camera operator, but that didn't last too long. So I was focusing on music for a while and making, pretty terrible hip hop music in the early sort of 2000s. And then that kind of transferred in a sort of bizarre kind of way into having an interview at Sony Music with Psycho, who of course that's Simon Cowell's label. They make Britain's Got Talent, and of course they made The X Factor back then. So that was kind of my big in, I should say, really into the TV industry. Was casting for The X Factor, and that happened back in sort of 2013, I suppose. Yeah.
So it's your fault that the music industry is on its ass. Is that what it's saying?
I think there are many, probably, in the same ways that we all find ourselves in the Badlands. There are many contributing factors to why the music industry finds itself in its current predicament. If it is in one, I'm still unsure. I think the big wigs are still making quite a bit of cash, so they're doing all right. I think, the real casualties of the music industry are, I suppose, the suffering artists. The
hospitality industry, right? The venues and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little window into that through friends that work in the business, both on the kind of booking side of big gigs and that sort of thing. I mean, I know that Coldplay at the moment are actually contributing some of the money from their giant tours that obviously rake in a lot of cash to the smaller venues. So I know that they're doing something which is good. But yeah, you know, a lot of these small venues are really struggling. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, all that jazz. What else? Because yeah, you've done tons of stuff, right? Music side, A&R, all sorts.
Yeah.
You've
So,
found you've discovered some people.
well, I suppose it's a tricky one. I mean, when I was making hip hop and rap music uh, back in the early 2000s, or mid 2000s, whatever, like it's all a blur. I would go and do a lot of gigs. I would do a lot of gigs in London, but I would also play in Brighton because I'm from the South Coast, so I was sort of down that in that area. And I would sometimes, or I did on a couple of occasions, support a group called Rum Committee. And back then, Rag and Bone Man was part of that kind of hip hop crew in Brighton.
There you go, people.
And so when I went to work at Sony Psycho, I was the first to kind of utter his name, amongst those people. And I believe that, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but I do believe that they really did want, Rory is his name. They really wanted Rory to do X Factor.
Really?
And rightly, obviously, given hindsight, Rory gave him the finger and said, no, I don't particularly want to do that. I'll go it alone. But I believe that once, I think RCA and Columbia kind of got wind of this guy that could sing like he was from the deep south and, was kind of covered in tattoos and just had this great aura about him. And also Rory is a really lovely bloke. I don't claim to be great friends with the guy, but every interaction I had with him, he was a lovely, lovely geezer. So, it went on and it was history. He's done really well for himself. Same with, just actually having the Sony Music email opened a lot of doors for me in terms of I was just a fan of music and I liked a lot of sort of unheard music, and I would just look at those people and go like reach out to them via email. And I think they saw like a Sony Music email and were like, oh my God, this could be my break. And they came in, and the reality was I had very little clout, and I also worked for Psycho, and I suppose my musical tastes don't necessarily align with what Psycho were doing at the time, but I brought in Loyal Kana and Rebel Clef, and we sat in this lovely room that they have in the Sony Music offices in Kensington, where they have an amazing sound system, and they just played me their music. Same with a friend of mine, Dirty Dyke, who's a sort of underground hip hop artist, I would suppose you would call him. He came in and played me like his new tracks and stuff. So it was just like a fun thing for me to be able to do. And the reality of it was I couldn't do much, but potentially their faces being seen around Sony Music could maybe open doors, or, actually with Loyal going on to do amazing things and headlining big, huge festivals, and he's done awesome. So it's great to see. I mean, obviously I'm incredibly bitter about it and I want my cut, but, I'm also a bit of a...
But this was when you were at Psycho, you were working on X Factor and all that jazz. And then from there, what did you do next after that? Like, because is that still going? I'm aging myself, or maybe...
No, X Factor's not going anymore. Right. Britain's Got Talent, of course, is still going. And just to give a shout out, there's a really great man that I worked for there called Barney Addison, who gave me the chance, gave me the job, and Barney was like nothing but supportive in that role. He is now, I believe, head of talent at Thames Television, I think. And he was just a really a great person to work for, and also they kind of put their faith in me in that job anyway, to kind of find the people that were, I suppose, leaning more towards being quite serious about music, instead of people that were, working as a, receptionist in a dentist and just like singing karaoke on the weekend or whatever. So, I kind of ended up going after the ones that were, really quite talented and pursuing that music career, and said, look, X Factor might not be your first choice, but it is something with millions of eyeballs on it and can work for you. But you just have to be kind of strong enough to go through that process, and also be able to handle if it doesn't work. So sorry, I'm just sticking on X Factor now, but it was that was a big thing, and yeah, shout out to Barney, he was great. But from that, I kind of found myself getting, I suppose, like many people do in the creative industries, a bit pigeonholed, and it was seemingly that, you know, I was a one-trick pony that could work only on music shows. So obviously, where would I go after being on the X Factor, but to The Voice?
Yeah, sure.
You know, the Manchester United to their Man City. So when I transferred, and you know, it wasn't a huge transfer fee, I'll have to say that. But
not really for the money. That's why they do it, and they're like, fair play to them.
this is it. But there, I continued to do the same, and you know, and tried to bring in some really talented singers. You know, and the funny thing is I do think, you know, I have a good ear for talent, and but obviously it's different. They're often looking for different things in those shows. So, but I managed to get some great people for The Voice too. And that was a great time working there. So, but then to answer your question, yeah, I was sort of pigeonholed. So I found myself like looking for potentially doing different things. I wanted to maybe move into sort of documentary a little bit more factual and sort of interesting, maybe artistic or music documentaries was maybe where I wanted to be. But I kind of ended up stuck in this sort of, you know, doing these other shows, which wasn't a bad thing. I mean, lots of people would bite your arm off to do those shows, and I had a great.
That's where the money was at the time, right? As in, not as in the pay, but the investment and the kind of advertising revenue and things like that. Those shows are big deals, right? So I assume that's where the emphasis was in those particular companies.
Yeah, absolutely. They were juggernauts, you know. They were the big Saturday night telly shows, and the thing is, though, I don't think it's finite, but you know, it was. I suppose the time I joined wasn't at the beginning. It wasn't quite at the end, but it was kind of getting to this point where, you know, the constant looking and casting of these acts and these people became more and more difficult. And then, you know, while that's happening, I suppose if you were to do like a graph of it, you know, you've got your kind of attention span bar going along this way of the public's attention for those type of shows. And then also you've got the talent bar of like, you know, a finite amount of talent on a small island that we live on, Little Grey Island, with people that can sing like Whitney Houston or whatever. So it's like, you know, that thing inevitably, you know, can't go on forever. But, you know, people like Barney do a fantastic job in really making those shows still happen. And I think that's, that's admirable, definitely.
So how did you break out of the juggernaut one trick pony? And can I ask, in those jobs, are you literally traveling the country, going to all those kind of audition things that you see on this show, and you know, you're seeing, like, say, Joan from HR who can sing one song?
Yeah, right. Exactly that. Yeah, which part of what made it so magical and strange and weird as a job. You know, I find myself like in the Emirates Stadium in like one of the boxes, and there's just a queue of people outside waiting to sing for me. I mean, it's a bit like you imagine being like the king when you know, the jester performs for him and they go, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down or Caesar. It's an incredibly strange power trip.
Yeah, I bet.
That you have, and you can't,
when you've got to remove your own musical taste from it, I assume, right? Otherwise, it's a bit like, well, unless Radiohead walk in, I'm the fucked. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really was a peculiar situation. But you know, I remember early on, I was sat in I was just starting out, and I was sat in not rehearsal. Audition, thanks. Yeah, an audition. And a lad came in with an acoustic guitar, and obviously I'd seen the show, so I knew who Simon Cowell was. And my interpretation was, you know, we are like a precursor to the show. So, you know, we are the judges here, you know, later on they become the celebrities or what have you. So this poor lad started singing, and he sang Hit the Road Jack and played the guitar as well. And it was all right. You know, it certainly wasn't going to set the world on fire. but at the end of it, I still cringed that I did this, but I was just so sort of Simon Cowell in my own head that when he stopped singing, I went, well, we are going to ask you to hit the road, Jack. Do you feel like you can come back, next year and try again? And the two girl producers that were with me just, shot me these looks of like pure horror, like who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah, the most unprofessional thing. It's so unprofessional, but it's so funny.
It really was. It was awful. But yeah, I'd be like at the Emirates in this room. It was just really bizarre time. And then as well, you would have sort of this earlier rehearsal stage where all of them would come and you would just be sat in these little directors' chairs, like lots and lots of separate judges, early judges, and they would just come up and you would give them a ticket, but they were literally like 6 feet apart with just like a partition kind of wall between them, so you could hear every other person singing.
Right.
So that, as someone that wants to try out, must be so nerve-wracking.
Terrifying. Yeah, terrifying.
Absolutely horrifying.
It's like listening to another agency pitch before you walk in and do your pitch to a client. It's like, Jesus, why didn't you come up with that idea? They'd be fucking awful.
Exactly that.
So from there, you kind of, you thought, hang on, the public have had enough of these people. What we're going to do next?
I don't know if I thought that. I mean, I reached a time at Sony Psycho where I was just like, I was just a bit burnt out from looking for talent, and that was it. And as soon as I brought it up, Barney was like, cool, no worries, like, not a problem. But then
it must be one of those things that if your heart's not in it, it is impossible to do, because it's slightly unfair on the people who are coming in, right? Do you know what I mean? Like there's so much riding on it in their life that if you're just phoning it in going, I can't be fucked listening to this guy sing today, like.
Yeah, it's a real strange one, and it does, and also you are dealing with something that's kind of heavy in a way, because like also you got to remember I made music for quite a long time, and I also have that as a dream at one point in my life that I thought I might be the next Mike Skinner. Obviously, I clearly absolutely am not and wasn't, but I did have that kind of delusion at one point, and I understand when people put. Also you've got to remember in small towns and stuff around the UK, there's always singers that are like singing at pubs and this was sort of like before the massive juggernauts of social media. So, you didn't have TikTok and stuff at least. But so these people that were like small town heroes, they would come off the stage and people would go, why aren't I hearing you on the radio? Like, why aren't you a massive pop star? And it only takes like, 10 or 15 people telling you that to make you go, why am I not a massive pop star? And do you know what I mean? And that when you get to that stage and when you're casting those people, they really do have those dreams and they hang a lot on them. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's a lot to deal with, I think.
So go on, you've had the realization.
I've moved on. I've done, and then gone on to The Voice. We won't talk too much about that. Then I ended up doing a show for Sky Arts, which was called Tony Visconti's Unsigned Heroes. And so when I got there, that seemed like a real step for me towards doing like a more eclectic kind of music show. And I was really excited about it. And obviously Tony Visconti,
surely you're just thinking, how long before I can ask him David Bowie questions? Like, the first thing I'm thinking, like, meet him one, can I bring it up? Or have I got to have a few beers with him on the road first? Like, when can I bring it up?
I mean, I was never really sort of like around him all that much. I was certainly like had chats with him and stuff. And there was one time that I remember we were at Nitin Sawhney's studio, and he was showing us how he did like martial arts and was like strangling one of our other casting producers, which was just brilliant to watch that. I think I still got a picture of my phone of Tony strangling one of our casting producers. So watch out, Tony, just in case. But he was a funny guy. He was a really lovely guy, and but also the kind of telly machine and the idea of what that show needed to be, and then my idea of what it could have been were just very different. And I certainly wasn't in a position high enough to be able to make those decisions in that show. So what they were left with was, it was a good show, but like for me, it could have been so much better.
And then from there, like, where are you now? Where in your career? Where are you at this stage?
So I'm still doing casting essentially, and I'm wanting to move into development. So then my brother works in development, and I feel like, most of why people get into the creative industries is because they don't want to let go of this kind of childish imagination that they have. And I'm the same. I just like coming up with ideas, however avant-garde or strange or funny or stupid or weird or terrible. I love making up ideas and coming up with ideas. So I wanted to come up with ideas for my own shows. But I also probably have this delusion that, I'm always right, and, anything that I think will be a massive hit, which isn't going to be the case, of course. But so
I think all creatives have like a really strong belief in their own thing. I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think you have to have it, don't you? You have to have action in your ideas. And so I ended up doing, because also I wasn't known for that. So I was known for doing casting on, music shows and talent shows. So I actually had to kind of try out for this development role with NBC Universal, which meant I kind of went into this big, like almost like apprentice style kind of interview process where we all had to come up with ideas for shows and then like do these workshops and bits and pieces, and then we would be selected by NBC Universal and this company called Telecopter that were based in Holborn at the time. And then so I kind of came through that interview process and got my first job in development. And we were in this like funky little very Nathan Barley-esque office in Holborn that had like a ping pong table and was every bit Nathan Barley as you can imagine. And we would just kind of knock around ideas and try and come up with ideas for new shows. So that was my first kind of foot in the door with development. Yeah.
And then and then is that the last thing you were doing before you weren't doing anything?
Yeah, so development was, I kind of, I guess in the same as advertising, when you're freelance, it's difficult for you to make like one solid change in your career, i.e., I'm working for car brands or whatever, and now I'm going to work for fast food brands or something. I mean, I don't know anything about advertising, so I'm just making that reference. But for me, it was, going from casting to development was like a process where it didn't work like straight away. Like all of a sudden I'm just making ideas for shows. I did that job at NBC Universal at Telecopter, and then I went back and did like more casting jobs again in between that may have been, anything from like a week to like a couple of weeks. Like I worked on like a sort of horrible like poverty porn benefits life on the breadline show.
Jesus.
Which had me, they sent me to like the most sort of the poorest estate in Bradford and had me going door to door, knocking on people's doors and asking whether they had jobs. Now, I wouldn't recommend anyone do that because, and I only lasted, I think, 4 doors. By the time I got to the 4th door and knocked and heard a rather angry and scary dog coming at the door, and then was a woman answered, and I said, I'm from this show, and we want people, that are out of work to have their say on, England and politics and what have you. That's how we kind of pitched it. She, in no uncertain terms, told me to fuck off, or the dog's gonna eat me, basically. So I was like, yeah, no, that is fair enough. But again, a very strange show that I worked on. And then I've done like motorway shows for Channel 5. I did a show called Budgies Make You Laugh Out Loud.
They do. It's true.
Yeah. Budgies Make You Laugh Out Loud. I mean, they might initially, but spending, 4 or 5 weeks just scanning YouTube for any kind of video of a bird that might be funny will actually send you slightly mad, and did actually push me slightly over the edge to almost a breakdown on that.
Well, I think there's a YouTube channel in this. Come on, Jay. I think surely it's the time's right. So look, and then there's that. I guess because you've been slightly permalancing, contracty, the TV production world is very freelancey. Just from my own kind of interactions with it through the advertising industry and production companies that I've worked with to make shit. How come then so this has led you then to being, you've clearly worked on some fucking amazing things, some huge juggernaut stuff, blah, blah, blah. But you and I are talking today because you're in the Badlands. And I guess the question is how and why and how long has it been? And like, what was the last stuff you were doing? And then at the time, did you think, oh, well, the next thing will come along, and it just hasn't? Or because you've had such a good career doing all these really interesting things, even the budget crowd stuff, but then you haven't been for the last, I know how long you've been out.
It's been a year.
So what's happened from all of that stuff? Then when did the wheels come off? And do you have a view on why? And
so the last job I was doing was I was development producer and kind of, I suppose, development producer for a company called CMC Media that are based in Miami, working for a guy called Marlon Quintero. And he was, again, a fantastic boss to work for. And he really kind of gave me free rein pretty much to put my own ideas together and pitch materials, research all of those things. And he gave me kind of all the tools that I needed to do that freely. So that was like a really wonderful job to have and place to work. I was there for 2 years, which ended in November last year. And I suppose, well, I know the reason that job ended was purely for the fact, and we got 3 projects away that year, including kind of a second series of like an adventure show with the Weather Channel in America, which was called Uncharted Adventure, which is a great show. But, they were pretty small fry in the world of telly. So we didn't have like a big flagship show on like National Geographic or Discovery or like, Sky or any of the big streamers, But we did get stuff away. So in that sense, we were successful. And I think it might be presumed that, when you work in TV development, when I tell people I work in TV development, they go, oh, really? Like, what have you had made? And the reality is that a lot of people, even really heads of development and top people in television, may have only had one show made, might even not have had any shows made, and still be head of development at certain places. So,
well, you can be a professional golfer and never win golf tournaments and have like a 40-year career as a professional golfer.
Exactly, which is what I would rather do, but I'm shit at golf.
Yeah, no, tell me about it.
But yeah, so it was, it was a real, and again, I suppose this is a similarity with the advertising world. It's like, your pitches get knocked back all the time. So you're constantly dealing with that kind of rejection of, putting a lot of time and effort into a project for it to be kind of pulled apart and then kind of just kicked to the curb.
But the Budgies TV show got through, so there's no rhyme or reason.
I mean, the Budgies TV show, if you can call it casting, would you be casting birds? So I was casting on that. I didn't actually come up with that genius idea. I mean, I'm sure I'd be driving around in a Ferrari with
you'd be on in the Caribbean with Cowell.
I'd be in the Caribbean with Cal, and we'd just be laughing hysterically at Budgies together.
Go on, sorry. I keep going back to it to make light of what is a shitty thing because it's hilarious.
No, it is funny, and I've got loads of, maybe I should start a podcast about all the bizarre things that I've encountered.
Yeah. TV shows that didn't get made, and then you could literally ask the public, "Do you want to actually see this?" Because people didn't. Some genius somewhere in some exec committee didn't think anyone would want to, but you put it out, and millions of people want to see the Budgie Regards.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it does all hang on on that one person, and you know, and all the other ingredients that go into that meeting that you have on the day. You know, all the like times I've walked into the BBC or walked into Sky or walked into, you know, Discovery or Nat Geo or any of these places. It's all balancing on, you know, that one person and whether they think your idea is decent or it's shit.
But do you think that's part of the challenge of the industry at the moment and the kind of decline in your eyes from a, you know, it's clearly dried up a little bit, right? Given that you're in the Badlands and you've been for a year.
Yeah. And I think people look at it and they go, well, telly's still on. I switch on the telly and there's a million channels and there's loads of shows. So what's going on?
Yeah.
And so, and rightly, really, because I'm a little bit like confused by it. But my sort of assumption is that it's, you know, it's a combination of a lot of different things. But, you know, really it's the money and how the money is being spent. I think the absolute aversion to taking any type of risk. And I think that was really kind of, you know, galvanized more throughout COVID, where the real sort of heads of these networks are kind of just like worried, essentially, and probably rightly so. But and I think we spoke about that really briefly. But I think whenever that sort of happens, whenever you take the decision making out of the hands of the people that are creatives and put it into the hands of people that are purely watching the numbers and money, for me, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Seinfeld famously talks about it, doesn't he? Like this idea that a comedian can be asked to make a TV show. They come in and pitch to someone who's not remotely funny, and that person's supposed to decide if the thing he's telling them is funny or not. It's insane. You know, it's like the wrong way around. They should get out of the way and just let people make the funny thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird block.
That's a perfect analogy for it. And I think, you know, that's part of, you know, many contributing factors. But, you know, people are just sort of saying that the money isn't there, the budgets aren't there, and especially with non-scripted television. So, you know, with non-scripted, it's a bit, again, you could relate it to music, you know, they want to kind of dip their toe in the water first. So if someone has an idea, you know, for a new reality dating show or a new documentary or whatever, then that will go on either, you know, BBC4 or BBC3, and it will be on at a random time and have probably very little kind of supporting PR to let people know that it's on. And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, you know, and it gets dropped. And I think, you know, that's another thing, like in a similar way to music, it would be like an artist got signed and they would maybe have, you know, a good sort of like couple of albums before they could break. Now it's like, if you don't have a first time hit single, we're not interested. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's there's a theme around in the episodes that I've done with people where short-termism is a bit of a thing at the minute across, you know, all sectors and kind of all attitudes towards hiring and firing and business decisions. It's all next quarter, Q2, Q3, Q4 only. No one's looking out 2-3 years anymore. You know, given the state of the nation and stuff, and the noise about the budget tomorrow, it's understandable. There's just a fear that exists in society at the moment, which is a shame. But it feels like, yeah, was it again back to Jerry Seinfeld. My dog's called Jerry, so clearly there's a Jerry Seinfeld thing in our house. But the Seinfeld show was famously only commissioned 4 episodes in the beginning. They were like, nah, this is bullshit. And then obviously, you know, went on to make billions of dollars.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's, you know, similar with like Gogglebox. I mean, who'd have thought people wanted to watch people watch telly on their telly? I mean, it's just like, you know, they never thought it would be something. And I suppose, you know, I wonder how many people there are, you know, in those positions of power, the real kind of gatekeepers and decision makers that are still of that kind of mindset when maybe they got into the industry and were, you know,
right.
years, and also like, you know, had that kind of optimism and that idea for taking risks. Because, you know, yeah, now it you know, it feels like you can't fail, but yet people are failing more because of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But equally, the flip side of that is I'm quite anti asking the public anything about anything related to art and creativity because they don't know anything.
people just want to be spoon-fed something, right? I don't like a show of hands when it comes to creativity or design or things like that. I just think it's nonsense. Like, an artist should be quite fascistic about it and go, this is my thing, put it out. People like it, cool. If not, they don't. But I guess the business side of it is problematic when it comes to, the money that it costs to make stuff. So you're in the Badlands. You have been for a while. And what was the big change from, previously you were getting asked to do stuff and, you were getting jobs here, there and everywhere. And then did it just dry up? Did the phone stop ringing, or like what happened?
I would love to say the phone was ringing, but even even in my downtime, I was certainly the one doing the ringing of the phone. But I think I can't pinpoint. I remember going to like this group sort of meeting of with a TV charity that were kind of there set up to kind of be like a support charity for freelance workers. And I went to this like networking event, and it was the most depressing networking event because it was just a room full of people without jobs. They were going around going, oh, how long have you been unemployed? How long have you not had a job for? And then I remember them saying that there was this kind of like jokey slogan in the TV industry that was survive to 25. And and people were sort of like saying it as a bit of a joke, but then, it became clear, and they also kind of said it, in that meeting that...
Wait, sorry, they didn't mean 25 years old, they meant 2025.
2025, right. Yeah, that's what it meant. Yeah, that's about to 25. Because I'd be long dead. But yeah, so they said to survive to 25, and it just sort of was like, actually, no, this is the the reality of it. And when I've been looking on, I use the specific kind of job search websites that you have to, subscribe to and pay for that subscription every year. And, even sort of, 2 years ago, like there were way more jobs to apply for. And now you're just seeing like one or two, three maximum a week. And then when you're applying to those jobs, I even, I did this thing where I delivered my CV by hand, this was months and months ago, but I was like desperate at that time. I'm a bit sort of beyond it now, really. I'm just sort of, I don't know where I am, but at that time I was like, well, what can I do? Oh, I'll go and deliver it by hand, because that's a real, like...
Really freak them out.
Yeah, really scare them. And it kind of did go that way as well. I got to this building, I didn't know where it was. I was sort of wandering around outside. I was like, where is this? Like in King's Cross somewhere. And then like I knocked, and it was like, is this it? And then I had to ask. It was just a really awkward transition. And then when I handed it over, the kind of office manager, she just kind of, the way she took it just made me feel super shitty as well. She's just like, who are you? Like, why are you doing this?
I'd have walked away thinking, oh no, that person's now got to find who she's got to give that to. They're going to put it on the desk. Will it be the right desk? Are they going to like? It's a beautiful attempt at just being, taking action and being active and taking a stand and doing it yourself. But weirdly, then you're going,
literally.
At least if I'd sent it on email, it would have probably got to the person. Now I'm reliant on this person who hates their job, hates me for knocking on the door. I was just unravelled at that moment.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a total Curb Your Enthusiasm moment.
I'm not sure what there is for people listening to learn from this. Just don't do it by hand. I don't know. I'm not sure what the lesson is yet.
Well, I would say if you do it by hand, then perhaps rehearse in some way. Try it in the mirror a few times, bit like
with a gift basket and a big cuddly toy, and just make it really, really bad. Like, here's my TV, but it's got a free car with it for you. It's parked outside.
That's right. And if you've got access to like a brass band, rope them in as well.
Exactly. Yeah. There's the sketch show in this. People dropping off TVs in imaginative ways.
But it's like, you kind of hear those stories about like, oh, we weren't going to give. We were thinking of who we were going to give the job to, and then this rogue guy just came out of nowhere, some like wild out. He was dressed as a hot dog and told us all to fuck off. And we thought, that guy's the guy for the job.
He's a maverick. He's a maverick. He's going to shake things up. But then equally, there's the famous story. I think I might have mentioned it before, but all of these podcasts are blown into one. Stephen Merchant famously got his job with Ricky Gervais because his CV was on the top of the pile of CVs on Ricky Gervais's desk. And Ricky Gervais, being the laziest human being in the world, simply took the one at the top and said, "This guy sounds good, get him in," because he couldn't be bothered reading any of them. And then look at this, the magic that then those guys have made, right?
And what you're saying by that is that it's all luck.
Well, I think at the time when we talked about that, yeah, serendipity and luck is a huge part of it, right? A huge part of it, because you might have taken your CV to that person in person, and she goes, "That's the most unbelievable thing. No one's done that in 20 years. I'm gonna put." You just never know, right? So sometimes you've got to, make your own luck a little bit and try some of these things.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, for people listening, this isn't, we're not taking the piss. It's more. Yeah, I know. So a mutual friend of ours, Damien, who did an episode, he told a story of, writing letters to someone they wanted to connect with, and the letter was, so he wrote him a short story. It seems insane, but actually some people respond really well to that type of effort, and, clearly it does set you apart. So, because particularly when we're all faced with this kind of faceless AI, CV scraping, kind of automated, responsive type world of hiring and job hunting at the moment, I do firmly believe there's probably something in the human side of this process of, standing out. It's a challenge, and there's probably a fine line as well from psycho to this person has made some effort.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how wide that line is, but
yeah, you never quite know how it's going to be interpreted. But there was a job. There was I know if we're going to touch on sort of like dream jobs later, but there was a job that came up with a company that I really admire their work, and they've done a lot of really incredible feature documentaries. And I had 2-3 interviews with them. So I say 2-3 interviews. I had like a couple of phone chats and then like a web interview with them on a webcam, and that one came not that long after I'd finished the job last year. I really thought it went so well. I was like, yeah, really good rapport with the head of development and the MD, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be in the bag. I can't wait to start working for this company. And it's really sadly, and this really knocked me at the time as well, because it was getting to that stage where I was like, I really need something fucking soon. And they just ghosted me after those interviews, and that really did make me feel shitty. That was horrible.
Yeah, it's not worse than not getting the job, but it adds a layer of just an unnecessary layer of evil to a thing that is already shitty anyway. Yeah, it's you're from the TV production world and Budgie world, and it's happening in your industry. It's happening across the board. And I'm doing an episode next week with an advertising person from the ad industry in Australia, Sydney, Australia, and her story is identical to the many stories of people in London. But the reason we're going to do it is to show that it's not just a London thing or a UK thing. It's a global thing at the moment. This kind of new shittiness, a new way of being with people, and the new norm is such an awful new norm. And I've heard a couple of recruiters, there's a volume in and we can't get back to everyone. I'm like, well, you used to be able to. So
yeah,
and there's a lot of automation tools at your disposal now for doing things that you can automate some of your shittiness of your shitty job. But the human part, you should remain human, right? So
yeah, I'm not saying like I want a reply for every.
You want them to come back to your door, don't you? You want them to come and knock on your door and go, "Here's your CV back."
I've gone through the process of actually talking to them, sort of. I say face to face through the screen of my laptop. Then I think courtesy saying like years for that. But
it's utterly unacceptable. That level of absurdity is just It takes nothing. A text message, fine. Third is 4 seconds. You didn't get it. All right, cool. It's nothing. Just the silence is the deadliest part of it all. So in terms of how have you been managing your? Because it's a strange thing. You said something there that really hit me. In that you go through a process of all of a sudden you go, well, there's no jobs. Oh fuck! And then you go through a panic station and you start applying for, Budgie the return, Budgie 2, and then you go through a bit of a phase of a lot of panic, and then all of a sudden that calms down weirdly, and you almost settle into your own new norm, which is a frightening experience and a frightening thing. And is that how you've experienced it? It sounded like that was So how are you managing your mental health, and like how are you keeping yourself busy, and how do you think you'll get yourself out of this? Is it keep knocking on the door, literally, or is it pivot into something else? And are you looking at ways to kind of take your skill set and through, the amount of content creators and I was having a conversation the other night with a chat, but we're both from the advertising world, but both are obsessed with a couple of YouTube channels now. Like I'll turn on this YouTube channel over turning on the TV, which apparently is what the kids do these days. I'm like, well, I fucking love this YouTube channel that I watch. The TV is different today, right? So how are you managing it, and then how are you moving forward? Is the long-winded question.
Yeah, I am. I think like everyone, it comes in waves. Some days I'm like, fuck it, doesn't matter. And what I try to come back to is that what I do for a job and the money that gets deposited in my bank every month or whatever doesn't really define who I am. And that might be a bit of a wishy-washy way to look at it, but it kind of is the mantra or something that I have to come back to. It's like I do still believe in my imagination and the ideas that I have. I do still believe that I can be quite good at procrastinating, which I think a lot of creative people are. But I've got like these little passion projects on the go that I try and throw myself into when I'm not being paid to work. So that kind of helps me. I try and do a bit of exercise, play a bit of golf, sometimes skateboard, although I'm pretty awful at that now that my knees are gone. But to be honest with you, there's no like solid routine or plan that I have, and a lot of the time, I just feel fucking lost, Jared. I just feel like I don't know where the next opportunity or thing is coming from, but I'm open to it. I'll tell you this, even yesterday I was at a acting course. I sometimes do essay work in between my freelance contracts. So weirdly, I've actually also been in Star Wars, and I was also a Nilfgaard warrior in The Witcher Season 2.
Hang on, I can't believe we didn't open with this. We've lost them. The audience have switched. I'm joking. The audience have never switched off. They listen to all these fucking episodes. But we should open with Star Wars, Jay. Come on.
Oh yeah. So you can see the back of my head extremely briefly in what's the new one with Ewan McGregor?
I don't know. You were in it.
Yeah. No. Exactly. Anyway, you can see the back of my head for about 3 seconds, clearing debris from a state.
Were you? What was your motivation for the scene? Like, did you prepare a lot for the back of the head? Like, did you comb the hair a lot that day, or how?
Funny story about that, actually. There is a funny story about that. When I went for so as I say, I do these essay jobs, these supporting actor or extra, I guess they call them.
I honestly thought you meant essay as in you write essays, but you mean supporting actor, the acronym from the TV world. Right.
Like Hispanic gangster from...
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's...
makeup.
Yeah. So I went for this job, and they don't tell you. So they give like the TV shows code names, but they said like turn up at Pinewood for the fitting, and we'll get you fitted for your costume. So I went to Pinewood, and I was sort of wandering around Pinewood looking for the costume department to go and put my costume on.
I probably need a James Bondable today. That's probably why I'm here. Probably a James Bond thing.
But as I was wandering about, there was this big like sound stage, and I saw that there was a bit of a gap in the big doors, and I looked through the big doors, and sure enough, there were spaceships from Star Wars, and I was like, "Holy shit!
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna be in Star Wars," and obviously I was super excited. But then I was like, I better be one of the rebels because I do not want to be on I just didn't want to be on the dark side.
Oh,
And
really?
sure enough, I was an Imperial officer, so I had like the grey space Nazi suit on.
Yeah. They're dressed good. I like how they're dressed.
Yeah, they're pretty snappy dresses. Although who dressed me on the day had these like boots, like this. I don't know what you would call them, but they're
Riding boots.
Yeah, like riding boots kind of thing. And they like wrapped up this elastic around my leg that literally almost cut off the circulation to my foot. Really uncomfortable. And then when we were in the scene, it was like we were basically sent in to clear this like space place, this space station that was being shut down and taken over.
Yeah.
So there were these space donuts and stuff all over the place, and I had to just like knock them out of the way. But I took it overly seriously, so I had a bit of a sort of a march to my walk. And I remember the director just said to me, like,
walk like a human.
What are you doing? What the hell are you doing? Because I was really giving it, like, hamming it up. I was looking like Basil Fawlty or something. I was just doing this.
Really? Big goose stepping, just naturally.
Yeah, exactly right. I was goose stepping in my taking my space Nazi role too serious.
Meanwhile, Ewan's in the corner, livid. Who is this prick?
He's like, who's this trying to upstage me? What's this?
Yeah, get back to your budgerigards.
Yeah, and so that was a funny one. I can't even remember what I was talking about.
No, I can't either now. And we just do an episode on Star Wars. You on your day on Star Wars.
Yeah.
So wait, you were at an acting course yesterday.
Yeah.
They went, hang on, the back of your head. Maybe we should look at the front. Wait, so you're doing some acting classes and this question was all about what you're going to do next, because I hear you. It's a daunting, terrifying. I often talk in third person there. I'm still trying to open some sort of advertising door, because I can go and do it easily, as in I know that world, I can do that. If someone needs me to come in tomorrow, I can come in and do it and do a good job. People are now looking massively outside of the advertising industry for practical reasons, and that after this long you start going, yeah, okay, fine. That's that bit's done. That bit's done. That's hard to accept at times, but then you go, all right, cool. What next? So I guess the what next that's where it gets really daunting, because you go, people think you can go and do anything, and you go, well, yeah. It's not. I haven't seen the job ad yet for X advertising people. We need you. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it's also not lost on me that jumping from an incredibly volatile career choice to then try
to be an actor,
maybe the best,
Yeah, but it might have been perfect training. All of that rejection might be perfect training for being an actor.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just like I just need to Google like jobs for people that fucking hate admin, and then like maybe something will come up. But I've been doing like a bit of gardening with a mate of mine who's got a really great business called Kikai Plants. He gives me some work and we do stuff together. I'm just sort of like all over the place, really, Jared. Don't know where I am.
Well, look, I think that's the way that a lot of people I speak to are. But it's keeping busy, and it keeps your mind busy, and we're all, we've worked our socks off to get to the point that we're at with our age and careers, and then to find yourself in this kind of weird position of not being in that type of job, you kind of need to fill the days. But no one I've spoken to yet has gone, oh, I love it, it's easy, I love the time off. Everyone's a bit weirdly Stockholm syndrome. No, I need to be working. So in terms of when we spoke offline, you mentioned you were looking at kind of your own content production and doing some bits and bats. Do you see the kind of new wave of content and stuff that gets made these days on YouTube and all the other platforms? Can you find your way into that, or is it not as easy? Am I asking the incredibly naive question like I get asked about, can you not go and do this, Jared? Am I asking the same naive question, I guess?
No, I don't think you are. I think what's difficult, and I think what a lot of people that have kind of come out or in the Badlands right now. I think it's probably like somewhat how we have been trained in our mindset to be like, well, this is how my life works. I get a
Yeah.
job, I do, I get a brief and I work to that brief. And I think actually the strange thing is when you take that kind of framework down from around us, although we all are creative people and have great ideas, we go, what? Like, how do I, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's a structure, because I think what I'd say, most of the incredible creatives I've worked with, and I've worked with some unbelievable creatives, there's a structure that's required to kind of almost caress their creativity along. They're not, a tortured artist sat in a room painting on their own and releasing stuff out into the wild every 2-3 years. You know what I mean? That they need an outlet, and I think we all do. We like that structure. We like the ability to kind of put stuff out. Otherwise, yeah, you could just go and live like a monk and write poetry and put it out. If you truly wanted to just be creative for the sake of creativity. But you're right. The conditioning is a big part of it. And
yeah, yes,
unlearning some of that is one of the things I've really had to work on. That kind of, how do you unlock some new ways of being outside of the thing that we're kind of trained into from the age of 14, 15, get
yeah,
job, work hard, work late, work weekends, and you'll be rewarded. And then all of a sudden you go, oh no, that's seemingly not enough.
yeah.
How do you unlearn some of it?
And I think, and like I'm 42, so I'm like, when I was growing up, I would grab the family video camera and, make dumb videos with my friends. And then, and we were like skateboarders and stuff as well. So we kind of were like already inspired by those things that went on to inspire Jackass and
Right, yeah.
like that. And we were like doing that weird shit anyway, because it was just all part of that culture. And then like, but if I was born in 2000 or 2010 or whatever, then all of that creativity would have gone into like YouTube or Instagram.
Yeah.
And you have then like, you're a sponge and you learn how to like do all the editing on your phone and how to use that tool, like just purely through your creative thirst at that time. But when you've like come up through this kind of structured creative corporate world, shall we say, and you've been in it for like 10 plus years, when you get spat out the other end and there are all these new tools that you can are at your disposal, or for me anyway, it becomes kind of overwhelming and you go, oh, I know I can, I have an idea, but like what, where do I start and how do I get, like I've got like a little couple of TikTok channels that I just muck around with. One's called Lunday Service, which is kind of like a review thing where I go places, but that sprung from, again, me wanting to sort of take up my time with something. And I was living in Walthamstow and there was this guy with a little comic shop called Krypton Comics. And you just don't see many like independently owned comic stores around anymore. So I was always fascinated by it. And I went in and it's just full of boxes and boxes and boxes of comics. And it's like, it was like a hoarder's kind of cave, this Aladdin's cave of old comic books. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go in there and make a little documentary about that guy because he's got a story to tell. And sure enough, he was in there with, and he'd written his own comic and drawn his own, was drawing his own comic. And it was interesting. And I just made a little doc about it and stuck it on TikTok. I think it's got like 36 likes. But it wasn't always about that. It was just about, flexing that muscle and trying to do something. And I'm still doing that, but it's just, it's painful at times. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Try and get your brain to just go, fuck it. And also I'm not the greatest or feel the most comfortable talking to the camera, but like, you just got to go, fuck it. Like, this is how it works now. And if you want to get your ideas across, you've got the tools. Show people that you're creative. Show people that you have something that
Something to say, I guess. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. When it comes to, the ability to put things out, genuinely, we were talking just before we started, a few years ago, for me to record this thing and put this thing out would have probably taken a couple of people. you know, in the old world of doing this. So they need an audio engineer and a sound engineer and maybe an editor, and you know, and all of a sudden now there's no excuse at all. You can do this type of stuff, and I think I have a young son, and you know, his world that he's growing up in versus even the one generation difference between the world I grew up in terms of your ability to kind of create and put stuff out versus what it was 10, 20 years ago is unbelievable. And I think, yeah, I know a lot of people I speak to on these episodes that they've all got their thing that they then start doing. And some of it is stuff that they've put off, or some stuff that they haven't had time to do because they've been working they're working their socks off and stuff. But yeah, it sounds like you're doing it out of a love for it and a need to do it. And I guess then it just, can you find a way to turn it into a thing, your job? Like, is that?
I mean, that's the other, you know, baffling thing to me is monetizing those social.
Just feels like it's a volume thing from what I understand. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's so strange, isn't it? And I think that's also part of that's part of what I think contributes to a lot of people's anxiety nowadays as well. Is that like I annoyingly pick up my phone looking, I think, for answers. Ultimately, I go on the internet looking for answers, and although we have access to like this like boundless amount of information, it's not going to like put its hand on your shoulder and go like, mate, this is what you need to fucking do.
No.
You know what I mean? And it's like, but I think for me personally, like I get that longing from like my interactions with the technology that I have now. I'm like, well, hang on, we have access to all this information. And then that can spiral into like, why can't I fucking make that work? Do you know what I mean? Why can't I make that work for me? But this is why it's great that, you know, proactively you've gone, well, I'm going to make this podcast. You know, and I think, and what you said to me before is like, there are many, many people out in the Badlands that listen to this podcast and go, oh, it's not just me, you know, and you know, maybe they feel the same as me in terms of like, you know, I was born in a slightly different generation and I really believe in my creative ideas, but I don't know how to really kind of transfer into this new world, I guess. And I think that's something as well with television is like, yeah, you touched on it earlier. You said kids don't watch TV anymore, which is absolutely true. And like, apparently now if you ask a class full of kids, like what they want to be when they grow up, like over half of them will say, I want to be a YouTuber.
Is that right?
Yeah. And it's like,
I wonder, is that the equivalent of saying I want to be, you know,
a pop star,
top of the pops presenter?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably. Probably, but that already just says to us, you know, well, it's changed.
But I think the big difference as well is there was only one top of the pops presenter, so 99.999% of people couldn't become that. Whereas now, anybody can become a YouTuber. It's a you can do what you want, right? And I think that my biggest lesson about myself and this podcast was just the difference was I just tried it. And that was it. There's no real, you know, you can just do it. And if I'd have put 2 out and then gone, oh, no one listens, you know, my wife's not even listened to it, fine, whatever. At least you've tried it. And I think that's a big, but I think the difference between maybe generationally is the youth of today don't have that barrier to entry when it comes to, should I try it? Because it's just normal. Versus...
Which is equally like a gift and a curse. I mean, if you look at the pictures on my early Facebook, it's like I don't want that shit on the internet anymore.
Yeah, well, of course, but they'll figure that out when they're 20 years deep. You know, that they'll have their own solution to that kind of.
Yeah, but they seem to have figured out that they, shouldn't drink as much as our generation did.
Yeah, maybe they're just dealing with it in a slightly different way. Not putting stupid content up is not the issue. It's doing stupid shit in the first place. That's the problem.
This is absolutely true.
Well, Jay, I'm gonna wrap up, mate. Is there anyone you'd like to? Is there anyone who's kind of been helpful throughout your shitty Badlands period? Is there anyone you want to say? You've mentioned a few people, Barney, but they were people you were working with. But is there anyone you want to shout out?
Yeah, sure. Barney Addison was great, giving me my first break at Psycho, and I really appreciate him for that. And hopefully, I'll grab a coffee with him because it'd be good to catch up with him soon. But also Marlon Quintero, such a fantastic
Great
man.
name as well.
Yeah, great name, great guy, lovely bloke. And CIC Media, fantastic company, and they do still have a plethora of shows to pick from and development options which were made by me. So if you do, listen to this show and think, actually, this guy might have some great ideas, then look up CIC Media.
I think you'd be getting a call about the Budgie Regard show.
I can't do that. That's a one trick budgerigar.
No.
But also I'd like to shout out Claire Lasco, who I didn't get to talk about too much, but I worked on a show for the Smithsonian Channel with Claire back in 2019. And then later on, we developed a feature documentary that didn't quite make it over the line, but through Claire, who's a fantastic showrunner and director and creative in television, I met Bing Liu, who is an overwhelmingly talented director who made a film called Minding the Gap, which is like a coming of age story of these three skateboarders in Chicago. And I recommend that if you haven't seen Minding the Gap, that you watch it. It's a really great documentary. And he's gone on to do other fantastic films as well. So shout out to Bing, who I hope to work with again one day. Everyone else that I've worked with, generally most of them have been all right. Some of them have been wankers. That's the creative industry.
I mean, I think that sums up most people's career and interactions with colleagues, right?
Weird.
Look, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's an incredible world that you've occupied and played in, and you've touched. The funny thing is, some of the stuff you've worked on has been seen by literally millions and millions and millions of people, which must give you pause for thought and a bit of pride. It sucks that you're in this position. Clearly shows that equally the TV film industry is in a similar predicament. And I know anecdotally from a friend of mine who works in the TV and film industry, it's equally as challenging for a lot of the freelancers and contractors in that world. I heard an awful stat that 56% of all TV and film contractors in the UK are out of work at the moment, which is a staggering number.
Yeah, in the 70s for non-scripted anyway.
Is that right? I mean, it's madness, and it doesn't help per se for people to hear that there's lots of people. In fact, it can be quite doom fear and doom mongering, but I think it's more just everyone remember that it's not you. It's not the individual. It's the circumstance in which we find ourselves. But there's lots of opportunity and there's lots of things you can kind of do and keep pushing, keep learning, keep looking after yourself and being open to new stuff. Right? I think that's the thing that you're doing at the moment. And
absolutely.
I think
if you need that mantra, just you are not your job. You are not your paycheck or your wallet. You are separate from those things. Just to reiterate that.
No, I love that. We'll leave it with that. It's so true. It's so true. Just stay on the line a second, James, before I wrap up. But thank you again for your time. Appreciate it. And everyone go listen to Rag and Bone Man because James discovered him and won't admit it.
Thanks for having me on, Jared. Really enjoyed it.
No worries, mate. Just stay there and I'll chat to you in a second.